Welcome to Betrayed and Broken S. Enjoy watching, we hope you will have fun with us. I still remember that night like it just happened. The moon was full, casting a soft glow across the farm, and everything felt quiet, too quiet. I had just finished cleaning up after dinner and decided to check on Theodore, my horse. He'd been acting a little strange all day, kind of restless, like he was trying to tell me something. I figured maybe he just needed a walk or a bit of attention before bed. I didn't think much of it until I got to the stable. When I opened the gate, Theodore didn't greet me like he usually does. He was standing in the corner, still and quiet, his eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. The air felt heavy, and for a second I even thought about turning back, but I stepped in anyway. As I got closer, I noticed something odd. There were fresh hoof marks on the ground, ones I hadn't seen earlier in the day, and they led straight to the back of the stable where no one ever goes. I whispered his name. Theodore. He turned slowly, looked right at me, then did something he's never done before. Without warning, he nudged open the back gate with his head and bolted into the darkness. No hesitation, no fear, just gone. I shouted after him, but the night swallowed my voice. That's when I noticed it. Lying near the open gate was something wrapped in an old piece of cloth. It wasn't there earlier. My heart was racing. I didn't know if I should follow Theodore or check what he left behind. Something was wrong, and deep down I could feel it. This wasn't just a runaway horse. That night Theodore was trying to tell me something I wasn't ready for. I stood frozen, staring at the cloth bundle near the gate. My breath caught somewhere between fear and confusion. The night was still, but something about it felt off, like the world had tilted just a little. My first instinct was to run after Theodore, but I couldn't ignore what he left behind. Slowly I walked over and knelt down the wooden floor, creaking beneath me. My hands trembled as I reached for the edge of the fabric, unsure of what I was about to uncover. Inside was a small rusted tin box. It didn't look like it belonged in the stable or anywhere on my property. Really. I hadn't seen it before, and I knew every inch of that barn. Theodore must have found it somehow. But how and why tonight? I didn't open the box right away. Something about it made me uneasy, like it was out of place, like it didn't want to be opened. I looked back at the path Theodore had taken, disappearing into the trees behind the pasture. He'd never done anything like this before. He was always calm, always predictable. But tonight he'd changed. As I stood there trying to decide what to do, flashes of the past few days came to mind. Theodore had been restless, pacing in his stall, whinnying at strange hours, refusing food one minute and begging for attention the next. I'd assumed it was just the weather, or maybe he missed his old stable-teat, who was sold last month. But maybe it was more than that. Maybe he knew something I didn't. I finally took the box inside the house. I didn't open it yet. I couldn't, not without knowing where Theodore had gone. I grabbed my flashlight, threw on a jacket and headed back outside. The grass was wet with dew, and the chill in the air made my skin prickle. I followed the hoof prints through the trees, heart pounding, every sound magnified in the quiet night. An owl hooted overhead and branches snapped under my boots. The deeper I went into the woods, the more I realized how far Theodore had run. And then I saw it, his shadow, just beyond a thick patch of trees. He wasn't alone. There was something else with him, or someone. I ducked behind a tree, holding my breath. What was going on out here, and what had my horse led me into? I stayed hidden behind the tree, barely daring to breathe. The beam of my flashlight was off now, tucked under my arm, but the moon was just bright enough to see shadows moving up ahead. Theodore stood still, facing whatever or whoever it was. I couldn't make out the shape clearly, but it looked like a person hunched slightly, not moving. My gut twisted. Why would anyone be out here this late in the middle of the woods with my horse? My first thought was that maybe it was someone from the neighboring farm, but that didn't make sense. Everyone around here knows Theodore, and no one would just stand there in the dark like that. There was something strange in the way. The figure was holding themselves, almost like they were waiting or watching. I stepped forward little, trying not to make a sound. The twigs cracked under my boots anyway, and Caro's ears flicked. He turned his head slightly, spotting me for a second. I hoped he'd come running back, but he didn't. He just looked at me calm and quiet, like he wanted me to keep going. That's when the figure slowly stepped back into the trees and disappeared without a word. Theodore didn't follow. He stood there for a moment, then finally walked toward me. I wrapped my arms around his neck, heart still racing, but he was calm again, too calm, like he'd done what he came to do. As I led him back toward the house, more thoughts started crowding my mind. Who was that person? What was in that old tin box? And why did Theodore wait until tonight to lead me out here? There was a pattern forming, but I couldn't make sense of it yet. Back home I finally opened the box. Inside were a few old papers. Waters stated and yellowed a photo, a name I didn't recognize, and something else, a key small and rusted with strange markings carved into it. I didn't know what it unlocked, but I had a feeling it wasn't something simple. That night I barely slept every time I closed my eyes. I saw that figure in the woods, just standing there, watching, waiting, and deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Theodore had brought me to something buried, something that was never meant to be found. The next morning I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. The image of that figure in the woods stayed burned into my mind, and the rusted key felt heavier than it should have. When I picked it up again, I spread the old papers across the kitchen table, hoping they'd make more sense in the daylight. Most were too faded to read, but one letter stood out. The handwriting was shaky but clear enough to make out pieces, mentions of a hidden place, something locked away for safety, and a warning, don't come looking. The photo was even stranger. It showed a small barn, not mine, but it looked familiar. In the corner was a man I didn't recognize, standing beside a horse that looked almost exactly like Theodore. My hands tinged. Could it be an ancestor, some kind of past owner? I flipped the photo over, a date 1947 and a name scrawled in pencil. Eli. It didn't ring any bells, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was connected to Theodore. Somehow the key had to open something, and part of me was scared to find out what, but curiosity always wins with me. I saddled Theodore and took the photo with me. We rode out toward the edge of the woods, past where I saw the figure the night before. There was a narrow path I hadn't taken in years, barely a trail, now overgrown and almost hidden. Theodore didn't hesitate. He walked straight into it like he knew exactly where he was going. As we moved deeper, the trees grew tighter and the light dimmed. The air was thick and silent, except for the slow crunch of hooves on dry leaves. That's when I saw it, half covered by vines and leaning to one side. There was an old shack, small, worn, and exactly like the one in the photo. My C****** T tightened. This had to be it. I climbed down and approached the door. There was a lock, rusted but still intact. I reached for the key, hands shaking, but just as I slid it in, a cold gust of wind blew through the trees and I heard something move behind me. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Theodore let out a low, nervous sound. I turned around, heart pounding, and there, just beyond the trees, stood the same figure from the night before, closer. This time still silent, still watching. The figure stepped into the clearing, and for a moment I couldn't move. My heart was beating so loud it drowned out everything else. But then something strange happened. The figure raised a hand, not to threaten me, but slowly, like a quiet gesture of peace. The moonlight finally hit their face. It was an older man, worn by time, with tired eyes and clothes that looked like they hadn't been changed in days. He didn't speak at first, just looked at the photo in my hand. Then he nodded. "You found it," he said, softly, like he'd been waiting years to say those words. He introduced himself as Eli's grandson. His family had lived here long before mine and the shack. This locked place had once belonged to his grandfather. He told me there was a part of their history that had been lost when the land changed hands, something hidden, something Eli had tried to protect. That tin box, the one Theodore found, had been buried under a loose floorboard in the old barn before it was torn down. It had gone unnoticed for decades until Theodore somehow found it. Inside the shack was nothing dangerous, just a C****** T filled with old family journals, photos and documents that explained a story of hardship, resilience, and a deep connection between Eli and a horse almost identical to Theodore. It was as if Theodore had known, like he was tied to that history in a way I couldn't explain. Horses feel things we don't. That's what they say. Maybe it's true. We stayed in the shack for a while, going through the pieces of the past, sharing stories. I gave Eli's grandson the box and the key, and he thanked me with a kind of relief that only comes from closing an old chapter. Theodore stood quietly outside, calm as ever, like he'd finished something important that night back at the stable. I looked at Theodore differently, not just as a horse, but as a guide. One who carried not just weight but meaning, whatever led him to that box to that night. I'll never fully understand, but I do know this. Some animals don't just walk beside us. Sometimes they lead us exactly where we need to go. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, and leave a comment. If you enjoyed this story, this will help us create even more exciting stories just for